Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Megan Colburn, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Kai-leé Berke. Kai-leé is the CEO here at Teaching Strategies. She has taught and cared for infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergarteners in public, private, and Department of Defense programs. Before joining Teaching Strategies, she was the program administrator for a multi-site preschool organization. In addition to her local and national work as an early childhood trainer and consultant, she has served as an adjunct faculty member at Honolulu Community College and Pacific Oaks College. She is an author of many Teaching Strategies resources, including the Gold Assessment System, the Creative Curriculum for Preschool, and the Creative Curriculum for Infants, Toddlers, and Twos. We are excited to have the opportunity to present today's topic, Building Your Classroom Community. Before we begin, now's a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. Please check the audio settings on your computer as well as your speaker volume settings if you're having any audio issues. If you are still having trouble, please refer to the FAQs tab above the slides window in the webcast player for assistance. There are also some other tabs that you'll find in the webcast player above the slides that offer additional information. Here you'll find Kai-leé's bio as well as a description of today's presentation. We've set aside time at the end of today's call to answer as many questions as we can. To submit a question during the webcast, please type them in the Ask a Questions box located at the bottom left-hand side of the webcast player. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online within the next week, at which time you will receive an email with a link and instructions on how to access this archive. Now I'm happy to pass the microphone to Kai-leé to get us started.
Thank you, Megan. The beginning of the school year is such an exciting time. During these first several weeks of the year, you are busy supporting children as they say goodbye to families. They become familiar with your classroom and school routines and learn to find comfort in being a member of a classroom community, all while maintaining a secure connection to home. Some children with past experience in group settings may have already learned the skills they need to be members of your classroom community. For other children, preschool may be their first experience away from home, or this could be their first experience in a group setting with other children. Whether children are new to a group environment or not, we can expect that they'll be wondering about what lies ahead this year. And they're going to experience some strong emotions, and I'm sure many of you are already experiencing those emotions with the young children in your care. Fear, anxiety, extreme excitement, sadness, frustration. The time you invest now in building relationships with children and their families is well spent, and it will reward you with positive interactions throughout the year. A high-quality early childhood classroom really functions as a community, and that's what we're going to talk about today, this classroom community. A community is a place where people feel safe. A classroom community in particular nurtures social competence by helping children understand how to treat other people well and understand how they want to be treated by others. It also helps them learn to cooperate and negotiate, begin to learn about friendship, and understand how to resolve problems and conflicts. All of those things happen in a community. As children learn to interact with their peers, with the other children in the classroom, with the adults, in these more complex ways, they become productive members of the group. In the creative curriculum, we emphasize community because the classroom is an important setting for developing the positive relationships that really are the foundation for all learning. In the early childhood classroom, positive social relationships are at the core of the classroom community. Now, all learning and development takes place within the context of relationships. The social climate of your classroom is the most critical part of the learning environment because relationships with peers and teachers influence the way children feel about school, how they learn, whether it's a productive environment for them to learn. Because when they feel secure, when they feel comfortable, when they have good relationships with you, children then are free to do the work of learning. So the relationships you develop with children and their families make more of a difference than anything else you do. And it's why there's so much emphasis in high-quality early childhood programs on teacher-child interactions. Lasting positive results can be achieved through the supportive relationships that you build with children from that very first day when they walk in your room, and the guidance you provide to help them work cooperatively and develop good relationships with their peers. And so that's our focus for today. You purposefully create a classroom community by building individual relationships with children and their families, and by helping children build positive relationships with each other. At the start of the year, children have a lot of concerns and worries, and if they could articulate those clearly, if they could put those concerns into words, they might ask us questions like this. Will I be safe? Will my mommy, my daddy, my grandma, will they stay with me during the day, or am I going to be alone? Are my teachers going to like me? Will my teachers be nice to me? Will the other children like me? Will they be nice? Where do I go to the bathroom? What will I do here? These kinds of questions and concerns are top of mind for children. And on top of those worries, children have a lot to process, right? We ask them to process a lot of new information in the first few weeks of a new program year, whether they're already familiar with your school, with your care setting or not. There's a lot they have to learn. The names of lots of strangers. We ask them to trust adults that they're meeting for the very first time. They have to interact with children they don't know yet. They need to learn about what they may and may not do in the classroom, where things are located, how to use and care for the materials in the room, how to follow the sequence of daily routines in the classroom, and what it means to make choices. All of the time and care that I know you have already put into setting up your classroom and planning each day help children feel comfortable and welcome. Even so, with all of these questions and new information to process, these concerns on their mind, children can experience some pretty strong emotions this time of year. How you respond to those expressions of feelings lays the foundation for your classroom community. So with that in mind, allow plenty of time for hellos and goodbyes. At the beginning of the year, you can expect some children to really struggle with separation. You can make that transition from home to school easier by encouraging family members to stay for a few minutes and help children begin that initial start of day activity. Reminders of home can also be helpful, and I know many of you do this already. You invite children to bring a comfort item, a stuffed animal, a blanket, a binky for rest time. You may have family members record a favorite story, poem, or song so children can hear a familiar voice during the day. During hellos and goodbyes, it's also important at this time of year for you to learn about family rituals and participate in the rituals that children and families develop. Having the same hug and kiss routine every day, waving goodbye from the window, 2 high fives and a see you later alligator, or whatever that ritual may be. I had a particularly playful father and son in a twos room when I was doing an internship many moons ago in college, but this always stuck with me. They used to give each other kisses and high fives, and then Dad would bend over and his son would push him out the door saying, "Daddy, time for work, don't be late." Rituals like that, they help children and adults feel more secure because they know what to expect. So learning about those rituals and participating in them is really important. Equally important, maybe even more important, because you're going to do this not just at hellos and goodbyes, but many times during the day, is being prepared to be an empathetic, active listener. As children express their strong emotions during this time of year, you want the child to know that you understand how she feels and that you'll help her with her feelings. With young children, it's important to show your empathy with your facial expressions and the inflection and tone of voice you use. They may not understand all of your words, particularly children under the age of 3 or children who may be English language learners. But young children can get meaning from other communication cues. So you're trying to be an active listener when a child is sad about their mom leaving. You would say, "You are so sad because mommy left. You love your mommy. You love her so, so much." And you say it with a furrowed brow and that concerned tone of voice. As adults, we sometimes worry that emphasizing a child's sadness will actually just make the child sadder. So we try to distract children from their feelings. Very well-meaning adults do this all the time. For example, we say, like, "Oh, it's okay, mommy's gone. Let's play with this bear. Look at this bear. Isn't the bear cute?" So this can have some unintended consequences. One, the child learns that her feelings aren't appropriate, that they're not important to you. And as a result, the child's feelings can actually intensify. It's as if they're trying to say to you, "You don't get it. I don't want the silly bear. I want my mommy. My mommy. Don't you understand?" And we actually see, when we try to distract children away from their strong feelings, we can see those feelings intensify. They're trying to communicate something to us. So instead, let's be active listeners. Let's get down on the child's level, move our body close, offer appropriate touch if a child is comfortable with that. Repeat back what you hear the child telling you through words or actions, and name and explain children's feelings. Use words that describe feelings accurately, right? Use good feeling words: frustrated, annoyed, disappointed, excited, proud, embarrassed. Whatever the words are, begin to name those for children. We can also create quiet places where children can go in the classroom when they need time away from the group. In the creative curriculum, we create something called a calm down place. And a calm down place is a special place. It could be an inviting corner of the room near a window, or in any other area that's really away from louder, more active areas of the room. It can include pillows, soft music, stuffed animals, books, soft toys, comfortable seating, other materials that could be used during quiet activities. We show children this area of the room, invite them to visit it when they want to cool off, relax, take a break, or just need a minute to themselves. Throughout the day, we can watch for children who are becoming overstimulated, frustrated, or upset, right? Those big feelings children can experience at the beginning of the year. It could just be about suddenly being in a room with 23 other children. That can be overwhelming sometimes, overstimulating. So visiting the calm down place can be very peaceful for them. We can encourage these children to take some alone time, calm down in that special place. Focus on helping children recognize and manage their strong feelings by supporting them to practice some self-talk, take deep breaths, and use words to describe how they feel. So you've taken steps to make sure you are prepared to support children during those initial difficult separations, to support them with those strong feelings. Now it's time to really focus on building relationships with each child in your care. At the start of the school year as a preschool teacher, I used to really look forward to meeting these 24 children for the first time and uncovering who they are. Well, being a mom now to 2 young children, the beginning of the school year, rather than being super excited, makes me a little nervous. Will their teachers be able to see what makes them so special? Well, a couple of years ago, when my son was starting 3rd grade and my daughter was beginning pre-K, in addition to their 4-year age gap, their personalities are wildly different. My daughter is very social. She is independent. She eagerly embraces new experiences. She is fearless. At drop-off time, her first day, she walked confidently into her classroom. She found her cubby. She put her things away, led me out to the playground where the rest of the class was already playing before the start of the day. She ran up to the first teacher she saw. She said hello, introduced herself. She hugged a few classmates, and with barely a wave goodbye to me, she disappeared onto a climbing structure, calling out for a friend to join her. Perfectly relaxed, joyful, enthusiastic, at ease. My son approached the start of that new school year very cautiously, as he does with most new experiences. He had spent several days leading up to that day talking about the first day, what the routine would be and what he should expect. The night before and the morning of, those conversations intensified. We talked in detail about what he would eat, what he would wear, what time he had to leave for the school bus. We looked at every school supply in his backpack twice, and he recited his new teacher's name and classroom number several times that morning while he ate breakfast. Now, as his sister was expressing utter excitement about school, he kind of quietly said under his breath, "I'm more nervous than excited." I can only imagine how much care he took finding the classroom, the right hook for his backpack, and the desk his teacher assigned to him. Nervous and with caution. Every child entering your classroom at the beginning of the year is unique. They have a personality, a family background, and a set of life experiences that are uniquely theirs. But to flourish, every child needs to feel accepted and appreciated. Your influence extends well beyond the walls of your classroom and continues long after a child moves on to older grades. The quality of children's relationships with you, their teacher, is an important predictor of children's future relationships with others and their academic success. Now, for each of us, there are children who are easy to get to know, while others may be more difficult for us to understand. Learning about each child's unique qualities, what they know and can do, what their likes and dislikes are, whether they approach new experiences with caution, like my son, or whether they jump right in, like my daughter, can help you build relationships with them. Getting to know children well helps you appreciate and respect each child and helps a child build trust in you, and that trusting relationship is critical to your classroom community. Since we all know that in an early childhood classroom, those trusting relationships are the foundation for all learning, we must intentionally focus on getting to know children well, and the best way to do that is through observation. Observe, observe, observe. Observation is the most powerful and effective way to get to know and appreciate what is unique about each child. Make sure to observe children in a variety of settings and over the course of the first few weeks. You can review the objectives from your curriculum or your assessment and observe with some of those objectives in mind, particularly the social-emotional objectives, the objectives around general cognition. So what's their attention like, their persistence, their engagement? You can come up with a few questions that can help to guide your observations in those first few weeks. Here are some examples. When we're talking about infants, toddlers, and twos, how do they behave during hellos and goodbyes with their family members? What are their biological rhythms like, right? So when do they get tired, hungry, go to the bathroom, need a diaper change? How do they behave in small groups of children? Do they observe? Do they interact? Do they cry? Do they look attentive? Do they smile? Are there situations that seem to overwhelm or upset them? Lunch being delivered to the classroom, the opening and closing of doors, group singing, being in a particular position for too long. Do they have an object or activity that's particularly soothing for them? What is it, and how do they show their calm? And how do they show that they want that object? With preschoolers, we can ask ourselves, how do they interact with their families during hellos and goodbyes? We all who have worked with preschool children for more than a year, you've seen the various and sundry ways that preschool children can behave during drop-off and pickup. Sometimes they completely ignore their parents. Sometimes they're clinging to their dad's leg. Are they eager for group time? Do they race to the circle time rug, or do they wait and see whether others are going to sit down or where other children sit down before they find a spot? How do they participate in classroom discussions? Do they need support to listen while others talk? Do they need your help to contribute their ideas? Or is their hand the first one in the air? What are their conversations with peers and adults like at mealtime, right? Those are our casual conversations. Where do they play? Who do they engage with during choice time? With young elementary-aged children, we can ask ourselves questions about how do they demonstrate their understanding of classroom routines and rituals? How quickly do they adjust to the rhythm of the classroom? Are they quick to raise their hand to answer a question? Do they speak clearly, audibly when talking in front of the group? Or do they use a very quiet voice? Who do they sit with at lunch or play with on the playground? Do they gravitate to a large group activity, one or two children? Or do they play and sit alone? Do they seem comfortable talking to adults? Or are they more cautious or fearful in those interactions with grown-ups? Now, answering questions like these can help you quickly discover and appreciate something special about each child in your room. I hope my daughter's teachers appreciate her outgoing nature as a gift to the classroom community. And I hope my son's teachers appreciate his careful approach to life for the contribution it brings to his schoolwork. Set yourself the goal of knowing every child in your classroom well enough in the first month to answer the question, how is this child special? If you do that, I guarantee you'll be starting your school year off right, and you'll be building a strong, caring, respectful community. While observation is key to learning about what makes each child special and knowing children well helps us build relationships with them, how we communicate with children is what helps those relationships flourish. So we want to make sure that we talk with children respectfully. We use that same communication principle that we would with an adult. We avoid talking down to children. We use our best manners, so we set the example. We pay attention to our tone and our expression. Every interaction we have with a child is message-laden. What are the messages you're intentionally or unintentionally sending with your communication practices? If you're not sure how you're doing, you can record yourself one day and listen to the way you sound. Ask yourself, would I use that tone of voice with a friend, with a coworker, with someone I like? Be sensitive to children's feelings. Like adults, children want their feelings to be taken seriously, not ignored, not belittled, as we talked about with the active listening strategy. We need to be empathetic in an effort to reassure children. We can sometimes make light of their pain in the way that we use the bear to distract the child who's sad at drop-off time. We hear teachers say things like, oh, that's not such a big deal. That's not a big problem. Or, where's your happy face today? I once heard a teacher tell a child crying at drop-off time that she loved his smile so much that she'd like for him to start leaving his tears at home. She's basically telling the child to never express sadness or fear or worry in the classroom. And I know that teacher, and I'm certain that that's not what she was trying to communicate. So being really sensitive to children's feelings and talking to them respectfully. Instead of making comments like those, we can observe and really gauge how a child's feelings and then acknowledge what we see and what we hear. We can also validate children's efforts, accomplishments, and their progress, right? That creates a positive communication environment in the classroom. Lots of positive, encouraging words are being spoken. Young children want approval. We know this, right? They're always looking to get our attention, to show us what they've done. But we have to be careful and thoughtful about making them too dependent on affirmation or reassurance from adults. So think about the message children receive when adults repeatedly say, good job, or I like the way you did that. When praise is very general, children learn that they should seek and depend on adults for validation of their behavior and their work. Praise really involves a judgment about a child's action, so it can have some unintended negative effects. A child may think, if I am praised, I could just as easily be criticized. As much as she likes it, she could just as easily not like it. And for some children, when they hear you praising other children, they may wonder why you didn't say their picture was so pretty or their block building was so cool, and then feel badly about their work. The point is to promote children's confidence in their skills and their ability to judge their own work. I had a teacher once sitting at an art table with a group of children, and there were like 4 children at the table, and she commented to 2 of the children, "Oh, I like your picture. Oh, I like the purple paint you used." And the 3rd child showed her picture and said, "Do you like mine?" Like, say something you like about mine. She did. And there was another child at the table who just quietly stopped doing the artwork and got up and walked away. And when I pointed this out to the teacher, she couldn't believe it. She felt so bad. And then the next time I was in her classroom, she was doing something new, which I call drive-by praising, which she was just making the rounds in the classroom, praising every single child as she went. So as she walked around the room, "Oh, I like your picture. Oh, I like your block building. Oh, I like that costume. Oh, I like that puzzle. And I like. And so what we worked on was switching from, instead of saying I like, say I see. That allows you to be specific, to acknowledge children's efforts. And if you just switch that one word, it changes then what you can say. So instead of "I like your puzzle," you have to be able to say, "I see you did the puzzle," right? That was a hard puzzle. You didn't give up. "I see you figured out how to make the car go down the ramp. I see you put your coat on all by yourself." And it forces us to acknowledge a child's efforts. Another alternative to that kind of empty praise is to ask questions, and that helps children identify by themselves what they've accomplished. How did you figure it out? What was the hardest part? What helped you? However you phrase your responses to children, be sure that your words nurture their self-confidence and self-competence. Taking a step back and evaluating your relationships with the children you teach can be challenging, but such a critically important practice. Children's success in school depends largely on your relationships with them. So observe them regularly, get to know them well, remember to show interest in children's thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Use a tone of voice that communicates patience and acceptance instead of irritation and criticism. You do these things and you will build strong, supportive, nurturing relationships with children that will strengthen your classroom community and yield positive outcomes all year long. Children's relationships with you serve as a model for all future relationships, and particularly their relationships with peers in the classroom. Successful peer relationships are really an essential part of a person's overall social competence and a critical component of building that strong classroom community. Relationships with peers affect children's adjustment to school, their academic success, and truly their overall mental health. Most preschool children are very eager to engage with other children. Their peer play has been developing since they were infants, and by the time they're in preschool, they're ready to learn the skills they need to enter groups successfully, right? And as they gradually learn those skills, they're able to make and keep friends. In a successful classroom community, not all children have to be friends with each other, but they do need to treat each other with respect and with care. Children who don't have successful peer relationships, who are rejected repeatedly by their peers, are in a cycle of rejection that they often cannot break on their own. They may approach other children in ways that actually invite rejection. They have no idea they're doing this, right? Ways like showing off, acting too silly, playing too roughly, or bullying, or otherwise being aggressive. The more they're rejected, the harder they actually try to use those exact same behaviors that didn't work in the first place. Some children may simply withdraw, but to break this cycle, they need the help of a caring adult, right? That's you. The early childhood years are a prime time to head off those negative consequences of unsuccessful peer relationships, because the longer a child remains socially isolated, the greater the likelihood that he or she will behave in increasingly disruptive ways, and academic achievement, not to mention social competence, will continue to suffer. So children who may be very shy also have trouble interacting with others. Because they're quiet and not disruptive, teachers sometimes don't notice that they don't have friends, that they're not interacting with their peers, because they're not disrupting the classroom environment. Some children, such as those who may have limited English language skills or a child with a disability, they may need extra help with positive peer relationships if they don't form them on their own. In a classroom community, the goal is for all children to relate positively with others and enjoy a special relationship with at least one other child. I've always loved something the founder of Teaching Strategies and early childhood expert Diane Dodge says: it's not a classroom community until every child has at least one friend. So how can we help children develop that friendship? They need 3 types of skills to form successful peer relationships and friendships. They have to know how to establish contact, how to maintain a positive relationship, and how to negotiate conflicts. Establishing contact, that's when a child has to use the behaviors that are required in their community and that are accepted by other children to establish a relationship. These behaviors include things like smiling, asking questions, offering ideas, making positive comments, inviting someone to join him, or offering something to share. Children who are rejected at this initial stage of interaction often haven't learned how to do those things. They don't know how to smile and walk up to another child. They don't know how to offer an idea when they see children at play. They don't know that giving a compliment on someone's work from child to child goes a long way in establishing contact. You can model that, coach it, and we'll talk about some of those strategies in a minute. Maintaining a positive relationship is just that. To form positive peer relationships, children need to learn how to cooperate, share, show empathy, express affection, offer ideas, help, take turns, express enthusiasm. All those behaviors that we know we need even as grown-ups to maintain our own relationships. Children who have these skills are acknowledged as members of their community, and they're viewed by other children as reliable. They're fun to be with. Think about the grown-ups who fall into that category. They are those children who grew up to be those grown-ups. The behaviors that cause trouble and isolation from a classroom community are the same ones that can impact our adult community. Those include aggression, unwillingness to cooperate, showing off, trying too hard to please, or just in general acting in ways that annoy people. By coaching and teaching intentionally, you can help children understand how their behaviors could be causing them difficulties unintentionally, and you can provide some positive alternatives. They also need to be able to negotiate conflicts. Like all communities, there are disagreements in a classroom community, and because disagreements inevitably arise in any relationship, children need to know how to resolve them. Socially successful children can express their ideas, they can explain how they feel, they can listen to another person's point of view and work out solutions to problems. As children master these skills, the whole community benefits. So as you purposefully build a classroom community, you give children many opportunities to practice the skills they need to develop peer relationships, to begin to make friends. Here are some useful strategies that you can use. Have discussions about making friends. Read good books about making friends. Coach children. Both neglected and rejected children can have trouble entering groups. To help them, you really need to model language for asking questions, making positive comments, offering help. Help children practice those skills. As children master them, coach them on how to offer trades, how to take turns, how to share, how to have back and forth conversations. The more their actions and expressions produce good results, the more children will take the risk to try those skills in the future, and the better the classroom community functions as a whole. You can pair children to work on a task. Partnering provides opportunities for children to work with someone they usually don't choose. So you can use opportunities to have 2 children who are not usually together share a job, such as helping you set up for an activity. They may soon work together on their own. They may choose it. And again, the classroom will be more productive because of it. We can interpret children's actions for them, right? Children who have trouble entering a group and sustaining relationships often don't know that what they're doing alienates others. By describing their actions, you help them become more conscious of and therefore better able to change the behaviors that are causing them the problem. For example, you might coach a child. Did you notice that when you sat down in the middle of the floor, you were in the way of the block builders? Next time, try asking the others, where should I play? Let's see if that works. We can point out the benefits. Look at the smile on Crystal's face. You can tell she's happy because you shared the markers with her. A child who recognizes the positive consequences of a behavior is more likely to behave that way again. Now, something in the creative curriculum that we do is called the Sunshine Message Board. And that allows children to give shout-outs to the other kids in the classroom. And they can do this by drawing pictures or by writing notes or by dictating a note to a teacher to post on the board. So it could be thank you for sharing the markers, or Jeremy made me smile today when he helped me finish my block building. And it's an opportunity for children to share those positive results. And we can minimize rejection. In any preschool classroom, rejection is a powerful and hurtful problem. In any social situation, rejection is a powerful and hurtful problem. Now, one well-known teacher, Kai-leé, I'm sure many of you have heard this, noticed that rejection taking place in her classroom, and she established a simple rule. The rule was, you can't say you can't play, right? Just by creating that rule, she found it was such an effective way to minimize rejection and promote a sense of community. We can provide controlled situations for children to work and play together. This is another example from the creative curriculum of bringing children together to create a mural. And you can see that they each have a section where they're contributing to an overall shared idea. We can teach social problem-solving skills, helping children calm down, helping them together identify the problem, helping them generate possible solutions where everybody's offering ideas, and then reviewing those options and having children choose a solution and try it out. We can also do that as a group. When you notice a group problem, so for example, the block area, children's constructions are getting so big that they're creeping out of the block area into the walkway, and some children are knocking them down, right? That is a great problem for the group to solve together and going through those same steps as a group. As you observe children, you'll usually find a reason why a particular child is being excluded regularly or why they're having some social problems. Find out what the underlying problem is and develop a plan to help the child. Will it be by minimizing rejection in the classroom through a class rule, or coaching children, or having more discussions about what it means to be a friend, or partnering that child with another child to work on tasks? Make a plan. Your goal is for your classroom to be a community in which children relate to each other respectfully and where every child enjoys positive peer relationships. The third critical component of your classroom community is, of course, our families, partnering with families. Home and school are a young child's two most important worlds. Children have to bridge those worlds every day, and that is a big task, a very big ask for young children to be that bridge. When the two worlds are at odds because of adults' apathy, their lack of caring, their lack of understanding, or their inability to work together, the children suffer. You can build partnerships when you truly value the family's role in a child's education and recognize how much you can accomplish by working with families. Developing partnerships enables you to work together with families to support their children's healthy development and learning. So we got to start by acknowledging the fact that families are already involved. Whether we want them to be or not, they have been raising their children since birth. They are the resident experts on their children, and they are the greatest influencers on their children. They demonstrate a commitment by enrolling their child in your program and getting them to your classroom every day. So we need to acknowledge, embrace, and respect that commitment. Just as you get to know each child and develop a relationship that helps each develop and learn, you begin building a partnership with each family by getting to know and appreciate each family. Every family is different. If you try to relate to all families in the same way, you will reach only the families who respond to that approach. By contrast, if you vary the way you communicate with families and vary the ways you involve them in your program, you'll be more likely to reach every family. So one obvious difference among families is their structure. The old so-called traditional family, two parents and their children, is not nearly as common as it once was. Many children are growing up with one parent. Some are being raised in foster homes by grandparents, by other relatives, in households with multiple generations. To appreciate differences among the families you serve, begin by keeping an open mind about what constitutes a family. And remember that however non-traditional a family may seem to you, children's families are the most important people in the world to them. So to love and respect and honor the children in your classroom, you need to respect their families. Families also have different temperaments. Some families, just like children, are easier to get to know than others. They may feel comfortable in school environments. They are eager to communicate with their children's teachers, maybe a little too eager sometimes to communicate with us. But others may be uneasy. They may feel reserved or shy in school situations. They may have unhappy memories of their own school experiences, and they're unsure how to relate to you, the teacher. Regardless of these differences, you can convey to all families that you value them and that your classroom is a safe place for them to be present with their children, for them to visit. Life experiences like level of education, socioeconomic status, health issues, length of time in this country also account for differences among families, and they influence the way families relate to their children's teachers. Some parents not only care for their children, but they may also be caring for elderly or ill family members. Some face challenging circumstances, such as unemployment, substance abuse, unstable or unsafe housing, depression, or lack of access to a phone or regular, reliable transportation. Your sensitivity to life circumstances, even if you don't know the specifics, just being sensitive goes such a long way in helping you accept and appreciate all families. And if you start with the belief that families are trying their best, that they're doing the best they can for their children, come from that place, and your sensitivity to their circumstances will follow. Now, cultural differences are sometimes a little less obvious, but they're no less important than structure, temperament, and life circumstances. Cultural beliefs, they include our values, our belief structures, the practices that we learn from our families, either through example, just watching what other people do, or through explicit direction. They tell us this is how we do things in our culture. Culture affects the way people communicate, the way they interact with others, and their expectations about how others will respond, particularly in communication situations. Because every culture has its own set of rules and expectations, different cultures interpret what people do and say differently. To appreciate how and why families respond as they do, it's helpful to be aware of your own personal experiences and how they influence your thinking and your actions. When considering families as important members of the classroom community, we need to ensure that they feel welcome in the classroom itself. So here are some suggestions. We need to make the entranceway to our rooms attractive and neat and inviting, right? That's the primary family space. So we want to make sure that that includes some nice touches, that maybe there's a plant, there are some pictures, there are displays of children's work. It's a lovely place for them to be. We need to provide a way to communicate with families in writing, so it could be a message box. We can sort messages by language if we need to, and color code the mailboxes according to families' home languages. Incorporate family items into your displays. If there's something special that a family has made that they've given, musical instruments that they play, or other contributions that family members have made to you, incorporate that into the classroom. Provide places for family members to hang their coats, to store their belongings. That tells them, hey, sit and stay a little while. There's a place for you to actually hang up your coat and join us on the rug. Keep a bulletin board with up-to-date information about program activities, meetings, anything interesting happening in the community. Have a suggestion box. Put it in a prominent place. Provide the paper and pens. Make an attractive display of family photos of the children in your class and their families. Put it at a child's eye level. Encourage a family to kneel down and look at those photos with their children. Place an adult-sized chair in the library to encourage them to stay a little while and read a book with their child. Display books and pictures that respect the diversity of your program. A family has to see themselves represented in your classroom, and what better way to do that than with literacy-rich materials. Offer resources that family members can read or check out. Post signs throughout the classroom that show what children are learning in each interest area and how adults can support what children do. You know, oftentimes family members don't stay in the classroom because they don't know what they're supposed to do there. So providing that kind of guidance can help them feel comfortable. Oh, this is what children are learning about in the block area, and here's a question that I can ask so that they can be engaged. Good communication is essential for building partnerships. Now, families want to know what their children are experiencing at school and what you've learned about their children. Often they have information to share with you as well. So daily exchanges are just as valuable as those formal communication methods you might use at conference time or by sending home newsletters. When young children have the opportunity to observe respectful and genuine interactions between their families and their teachers, they see that those two worlds that they're working so hard to bridge, right, home and school, they see that those worlds are connected. So here are some suggestions for making the most of daily exchanges with families. We want to greet families warmly. We want to make them feel welcome. Call them by name or last name if that's what's appropriate. You know, tell each family something their child's done. Comment on your plan for the day. So have something specific to say to each family. Now, good morning, Miss Lewis. I know Derek wants to show you the clock he's been taking apart in the discovery area. Share information about an event or something the child's done recently. Let me tell you about the building Janelle made with the blocks yesterday. It was pretty amazing. Solicit family members' advice about their child. We've been encouraging Michael to try new foods at lunch, but he's still pretty reluctant. Is there anything particular that we should know about? How do you handle this at home? Give support to families when needed. It's hard for Leo to say goodbye to you today. Can you think of a reason why? Maybe he just needs an extra hug. I know he'll be okay once he gets busy. We have a lot planned for today, right? Sometimes family members need your emotional care and support just as much as their children. Be a good listener. Active listening skills convey that families' concerns and ideas are taken seriously. So just like you are an active listener with children, you can be an active listener to their families. Talk about what children are learning. The end of the day is a perfect time to talk with families about what their child has done and explain the value. We saved the design Kate made with the pattern blocks to show you. Her ability to discover and create patterns is an important skill in all parts of her learning, right? So you're explaining what she did and talking about the value. And then we want to make sure we clarify our messages to confirm our understanding of what a family member is telling us. That's the time to use those phrases. Let me tell you what I'm hearing you say to make sure I heard it correctly. What I heard you say is, right, so we're going to repeat it back to clarify the message. You purposefully create a classroom community by building individual relationships with children and their families, and by helping children build positive relationships with each other. The time you invest now in building these relationships, building a strong, respectful, caring classroom community is time well spent, and it will reward you with positive interactions throughout the year. So I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who has been monitoring the questions as they've been coming in, and we'll take the next few minutes and try to get through as many of these as we can. If we don't get to your question, know that we will be going through those questions and someone will be following up with you. So Megan, take it away.
Great, thanks Kylie. There were a few questions about how to handle challenging behaviors at the beginning of the year. Any tips or suggestions?
Sure. So, so as we talked about at the start, children experience very strong feelings at the beginning of the year, and with strong feelings can come some challenging behaviors. Now, the first thing I always talk about with challenging behaviors is to know which behaviors push your buttons. So I call it your button pusher behavior. For some children who behave aggressively, teachers really can't handle aggression against other children, right? So that's their button pusher behavior. Or when a child says something to a teacher that's very disrespectful, that can make some teachers, their blood boil, so to speak. It's their button pusher behavior. When I was a teacher, it was when you'd be holding a child's hand to walk somewhere and, some negative interaction had happened of some kind, and the child does limp legs, where they just act like they can't walk and their legs go limp. He could have thrown a chair at me, he could have cursed at me, it wouldn't have mattered, but when a child did limp legs, it's just like immediately I knew that was the behavior that pushed my buttons the most. So know what that behavior is, and then know what strategy you're going to use, right? Is it an I statement? A child climbing on a bookshelf. I feel worried when you climb on that shelf. You could fall and get hurt, right? You're explaining what's happening, the feeling that you have about it, and the reason for that feeling. Right, we want to use positive child guidance strategies to not just address a challenging behavior, but to build your classroom community this time of year. So you want to make sure that they're rich strategies like I statements or a when-then statement, right? Offering a contingency. You're explaining an expected sequence of behaviors. So when you put the puzzle away, then you can go to the block area. Right, you're being very clear, you're being respectful, but you're giving very explicit instruction. We can offer redirection. I think most teachers are pretty good at that. Beginning of the year, offering choices. Want to make sure they're acceptable choices, right? It can't be the child who runs away on the playground when it's time to go in. We can't say, you can come inside right now or you can stay out here all day, right? Because he could say, well, I choose to stay out here all day, right? We want to make sure we offer two acceptable choices. So you can hold my hand and walk in with me, or we can hop in like bunny rabbits, whatever it is. Give them some choices. Sometimes when children are displaying challenging behaviors, they're doing it because they would like some power in the situation, right? So giving them a choice helps give them power. Another thing I like to do with any of these strategies is to pair it with a show and tell. So particularly, again, at the beginning of the year or when you're working with children whose language skills may not be as fully developed, so whether it's a child who's an English language learner or maybe just a child under the age of 3 or a child who's still working on their receptive vocabulary building, if you show them while you're telling them, so in the example of the puzzle and the blocks, you are actually pointing to it. Or you are, when you get your coat on, then we can go outside, you're actually pointing to the coat and then pointing to the door. That helps to make it more concrete for children so that they know what behavior is expected. We also can model specific language, and we talked a little bit about that in coaching and friends situations. But we hear a lot at the beginning of the year, particularly as children are doing things like snatching a toy or screaming when something doesn't go their way, that teachers will say, use your words, use your words, use your words. Well, at the beginning of the year, children often don't know what words to use. So we can be really specific. We can say, tell Michael, I'm using the giraffe, right? We need to give them the words to use, so modeling that specific language.
We're also getting lots of questions about including all children in the beginning of the year, particularly English language learners. Can you address that a bit?
Sure. So one of the things that I love most about the creative curriculum is that in a creative curriculum classroom, teachers accept and respect every child, and they view all children as capable and competent learners. Now, that's really the core foundational principle upon which all the caring and teaching decisions in a creative curriculum classroom are made. So, children who are learning English as a second language, they follow a specific developmental progression. And it's important for us to remember and view them as capable, competent learners. That's just making sure that we have the right strategies that we can use. At the beginning of the year, it's always helpful if we can learn some words in the child's home language and use them as we speak with children, even if it's just 1 or 2 words. We need to make sure we're using objects and gestures to communicate, that show and tell strategy. Like that plays out in all the communication in your classroom when you're working with English language learners. And remember that children are still actively learning. They're observing. They're making sense of what's going on around them, even though they may not be speaking in your classroom. We can offer encouragement as they feel more comfortable speaking. So if you have a child who's saying a few words, of course we avoid correcting grammar, and we can pick up on those words and repeat back with a few more words. So we're expanding on what they say. We use pictures and gestures to help them understand the new classroom routines, to help them understand the expectations of what's happening in the beginning of the year. But in addition to those strategies, they're just general strategies that help all children improve their communication skills. And that's one of the things that I think we can sometimes get stuck on with English language learners is we think we need very specific strategies related to Mandarin, if you have a child in your classroom who speaks Mandarin. But really, just general good communication building practices apply to all children, regardless of the language they speak or their ability. So again, doing things like just establishing a classroom community in which everyone assumes responsibility for helping each other, right? It doesn't matter what language you speak, it's everybody helps each other out, and we can explicitly teach children how to do that. And everybody needs different kinds of help. We can create language-rich environments. We certainly can have materials in children's home language, but also in English, right? Just having a language-rich environment encourages communication. We use lots of repetition, and we do this in infant-toddler classrooms. We talk a lot about how important it is for teachers just to have running commentary, right, where you're just talking about what you're doing. Now I'm putting the blocks on the shelf. 1 block, 2 block, here's a square block. Up, Michael dropped that block, I'm going to pick it up now. And you're just saying everything that you're doing to create a language-rich environment. That same practice works beautifully in a preschool classroom or an elementary school classroom with children who are English language learners. Describing what you're doing, what children are doing, helps to enlarge a child's vocabulary and increase their understanding of language and syntax. We can encourage socio-dramatic play. We know that at the beginning of the year that's critical to help children keep that connection to home, but it's also a safe place for English language learners to play using props. And props are a way that they can communicate. But most important, of course, is just to be patient, not to rush children, give them time to express themselves.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. We had a few questions about the physical environment of the classroom. Is the way the classroom is set up important to the children's social emotional development and building community?
Oh, absolutely. And for those of you who have created and work and teach in creative curriculum classrooms, you know how important the physical environment is in the creative curriculum. The way that we set up the classroom to include spaces for children to be alone, like our calm down place, or spaces for children, just 1 or 2 children, to be able to work together, and then spaces where children can come together as a larger group to work and play cooperatively. Being really intentional about those 3 different types of spaces absolutely contributes to building your classroom community.
Well, thank you so much, Kai-leé. This was really helpful, I know, to me, and I'm hopeful it was helpful to all of you as well. Thank you, everyone on the line, for joining us today. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will be archiving this webinar, and we'll share that for you once it becomes available. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.